As a reminder, if you're not aware, Mike Giblin at LPRC is doing a larger burglary project where he has solicited burglary data from multiple retailers, and he's trying to determine if there are correlation factors that multiple retailers can use, perhaps to identify where there's burglary clusters out there. So that project has been underway for some time, but if you have a lot of burglaries in your organization, I'd encourage you to reach out to Mike and share that data because I'm sure he's always happy to have more data. And then after I show you the analytics, I want to talk about what's worked for us at Alta and what we're doing to impact burglary losses, and also solicit any feedback from any participants on the group, whether they have tried anything else that has been more successful than what we're experiencing. Okay, so our burglary loss background, Alta is about 950 stores, primarily suburban centers, but our burglaries follow a similar pattern regardless of location. I would guesstimate that we have 2 or 3 burglaries a year that don't follow this pattern. Multiple thieves break in the middle of the night, and they go through the front door or one of the front windows by breaking the glass. They are generally in and out very quickly, 2 to 3 minutes. Because they're in and out so fast, the alarm company can't call the police and get them in time before the thieves are gone. We've got really good videotape, so we usually have good photos of the thieves, but unfortunately we don't have many apprehensions of our thieves. A significant amount of work for our local LP managers goes into working with the police to ID the thieves and get an arrest. We are celebrating this week because we just got an arrest of 3 burglars in California that were responsible for a half a dozen burglaries. So that was a big win for us. Fragrance is what they're after in our stores. Recently they've started going after some prestige cosmetics, which are the more expensive cosmetics in the store, but 98% of the time they're after fragrance. Average ticket on this product is about $100 at retail, so it's very easy to convert it into cash quickly. And we don't have experience with thieves going after cash or safes. We don't have a whole lot of cash in the stores. And again, I think because they're trying to get in and out so quickly, that's not something that our thieves target. So Alta has about 950 stores. In the past 21 months, we've had 127 incidents at 70 stores. Our average product loss is $4,000 in those burglaries. There's also the physical damage to the store. There's a very negative emotional impact to the store. First, it comes from being waken up by 2 o'clock in the morning telling a manager they need to get down to their stores. But particularly for stores that are hit multiple times, it can be very discouraging to the store team. And then there's also a negative brand image that we don't want to have, where the customers see that the store is damaged and that we're out of stock due to a burglary. So from an analytics standpoint, we looked at our burglary losses for correlation with a wide variety of risk factors, including age of store, market, center density, crime risk scores were important, and then if there's any time between burglaries in the market. And what we found was that burglaries are generally too random to build a burglary risk profile. You'll see in a minute, market risk is our primary factor, and then center risk is a secondary factor. Our thieves want to go to shopping centers and open mall locations where they can quickly get access to a vehicle. And surprisingly to me, crime risk scores were not a good predictor of risk. So we'll share what those numbers look like. So our burglary losses are concentrated in Texas and California. Incidents in our other states are relatively random. So we focus the analytics on Texas and California because that's where we've got a critical mass of data that we could do some deeper dive on. You'll see in Texas, over a third of our stores in Texas have experienced a burglary loss in the last 21 months. So that's fairly significant. California follows with 19 stores that have experienced burglary loss. And then after that, it's fairly random. We've had a lot of debate and discussion as to why Texas and California are high burglary loss states. Texas has historically been where our burglaries are occurring, and now California has been increasing in burglary losses in the last couple of years. We know that ORC is a factor where there's a ability to readily convert your goods to cash, but we've got other established markets, for example, on this chart, Phoenix and Chicago, where we've got active ORCs, but we just don't see many burglaries at all. So we come up with theories as to why they focus there, but we haven't got nailed down anything significant. So do store locations matter? And it certainly does. Our burglaries are concentrated in the suburban markets. And let me walk you through this chart. When we look at market density, super urban stores are your downtown in a major metro city. So this is for downtown Chicago, on the Michigan Avenue, downtown Philadelphia, we've got a store. We've got about 10 stores that we consider super urban in major metro markets. See that those stores have not had losses. Urban is within the city. Light urban is where you start to transition to the suburbs. Exurban, the others are pretty self-explanatory. Exurban is, I would describe it as the end of the commuter train line. So people will still commute into cities in exurban environments, but it's starting to get a little rural, and then of course rural is typically single market locations for us. And then in terms of center type, and so looking at the market density type, you see that suburban market is where we're concentrated in. Light urban at 12% of our incidents looks a little high compared to the 6% of our chain that we're in, but I think it's important to recognize that out of those 9 Texas incidents, those occurred at 2 stores, so that distorts the data a little bit. Moving down into center type, you see that our burglaries are occurring in power centers and community centers, major strip mall type of complexes where the thieves can literally drive up to the front door and get away is what they're looking for. So moving on to crime risk scores, we put our crime risk scores into 4 different levels, 1 being our lowest risk stores and 4 being our highest risk stores. And we saw that there's a slight negative correlation between rising crime risk scores and burglary incidents. And as we dug into the data, we saw that when you look at the combined Texas and California markets, it's a slightly negative correlation. Texas has a slightly positive correlation, while California has a slightly negative correlation. So our burglaries are concentrated in low, medium risk suburban markets because, frankly, that's where our stores are at. You'll see 65% of our incidents are in the markets where we have 72% of our chain. And the reason that we think that they're focused on our suburban markets and not the more urban markets is that our burglars may avoid higher risk locations as they assume that there's added security there. And then we have to recognize that our burglars are very mobile. And they'll travel to stores where they perceive that there's a lower risk of apprehension. Occasionally in these suburban markets, they'll hit more than one store a night. So they're balancing risk of being detected, and in urban markets where there's more street traffic and potentially more police presence in the middle of the night, they're not willing to take the risk to go into those locations. So then what have we done to try to prevent burglaries? We're putting in roll-down gates on new high-risk stores, particularly where other retailers in the center are using the gates. These gates are expensive. It's sometimes hard to justify the ORI on these gates, but they're less expensive to do if you put them in from the beginning as you're building new stores. We recently shortened our alarm delay at entry. It was at 60 seconds, and we're now setting that to 30 seconds. We'll see how that works with store teams, trying to get them during regular hours that they have to get to that alarm pretty quickly. They can't take their time, but it's usually right by the front door, so that shouldn't be a challenge. In our high-risk markets like Dallas, we've put exterior cameras with a strobe and a siren on the front of the stores, and to create more awareness when a burglary is in process. We're adding protective film to the front of the high-risk stores. It makes the glass more difficult to break. And then we tied in our energy management system to the alarm system, so when the alarm goes off, all the lights coming on, again, kind of like the strobe lights to draw more attention to the store. So the thing that's worked best for us is we're using GPS GPS tracking devices in high burglary markets. And these are a product from a vendor called 3SI. And the product's designed to look and feel exactly like a normal product, so that the thief can't detect that there might be a GPS device inside, particularly when they're trying to get in and out in 2 or 3 minutes. And once that GPS device inside the product carton leaves the geo zone of the store, the vendor has a 24/7 monitoring service that alerts police. This worked very successfully for us in Dallas earlier this spring. We caught a ring that was responsible for over $200,000 in burglary losses. They came in at about 2 o'clock in the morning. And the interesting thing about the Dallas market is it's got such a strong highway system. So the thieves were pretty quick in getting onto the highway system, but there was a high-speed chase down the highway in the middle of the night before they were apprehended. Got a lot of publicity on the news, and lo and behold, our burglaries in the Dallas market stopped after that incident. And so we're expanding this program into some other markets. Of course, as soon as we stop the burglaries in Dallas, burglaries in San Antonio and Houston increased, but we're expanding the product usage into other markets, and we think that it'll be very successful for us. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Stephanie and solicit any questions or input from the group.
Hey, I have a question. This is Kyle here.
Hi, Kyle.
So, how's it going, Mary? Very nice presentation.
Good.
Thank you. So with Texas and California being such enormous states, did you happen to see a concentration of those events in any particular section of the state?
Yes, Kyle, it's a good question. I mean, they are in the major metro markets. So, for example, Texas is easier than California for us. So in Texas, it's the Dallas, Fort Worth area. It's San Antonio, it's Houston. And so, for example, thieves are not going out to College Station. Even though it's a big market for us, it's a single market location, and thieves aren't traveling that far out of the major metropolitan areas. California is a little bit more difficult for us. We're spread all along the state in California, and we do see repeat burglaries in some locations in the Central Valley area, for example, that you would think would not have burglary losses. But that's been the focus there. So as we look at it, having about 100 stores in Texas, we'll probably, with these GPS tracking devices, we'll go into about 60% of those that are in the major metropolitan areas.
Great, thank you. And one other question I had, I knew this was a pretty big factor with Bloomingdale's as far as robbery and burglary investigation went, but do you use any sort of social media once you've identified some of your suspects? Do you use any sort of social media monitoring programs to possibly figure out who's in that social network for potential ORC gangs?
We have not done too much of that yet, Kyle. One of the things that we're starting to look at is the resale sites that are on social media, and starting to see when we see that activity on, I think there's at least 3 main sites that our team is looking at, that when we see in local markets that our product is appearing more often on those sites, then we try to work backwards and try to say, have there been a recent increase in cases that's driving that activity? Can we identify that to certain suspects? Can we get more notification out to the stores in terms of be on the lookout for these people? Can we get warrants for them? So that our store team can call if they walk in the door. But I think we're still probably from a crawl, walk, run perspective in terms of using social media tools. We're probably still at the crawl stage.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, hi buddy, this is Dave from Stanley. Question for you around sort of trying to take a sort of proactive approach to burglaries. Have you guys looked at potentially developing a predictive model?
Well, that's what this was a start of. But what we saw was there's really such a strong randomness in this, so we have narrowed down our predictive model really to being in these high-risk markets and suburban locations. So it's helped us a little bit to try to focus our resources in the right area, but there's a lot of randomness in this data. Now, hopefully with the bigger project that Mike Giblin's doing, he may see some more correlation as he's looking between burglary losses between different retailers that may give us a couple more insights as to other factors that we could use.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, this is Gabe from Exotica. I'm kind of curious. I don't know if you have this number handy, but what would you say is your rate of resolution and on these burglaries? And to add to that, what do you feel is the biggest challenge in closing some of these cases? Because it sounds like you guys have a lot of technology in your stores to kind of assist in identifying and deterring these incidents to begin with.
Right. So in terms of resolution, you mean are we successful in getting arrest and getting the folks in jail? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So we get very discouraged by our low resolution rate. Our LP managers spend a disproportionate amount of their time working on these burglary losses if they're in a market that's getting hit hard by burglaries. They're the ones that are putting together the photos, going to talk to the police fairly regularly, trying to get these folks identified, and it takes a lot of work, but it's very important work because until you get an arrest for these folks, there's a high probability that they are going to continue to hit you until they are arrested. We had in the Dallas market a few years ago, I'd say maybe going back to the 2012-2013 time frame, we were being hit hard by burglaries, and finally, through a lot of hard investigative work and using undercover agents, we were sitting out in the parking lots and remote locations. We were able to get an arrest, and we had some thieves go to jail for it. And then lo and behold, after they did their 2 or 3 year sentence and got back out, they started burglarizing Ulta locations again. So just to sum it up, our apprehension rate is relatively low, and that is very discouraging to us. I think it's the overworked legal system too, and the police system is a factor.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks so much. This was very helpful for me to put this together, and we learned a lot in terms of pulling together the data. And I'd encourage, if anyone wants to reach out to me and talk more about this in your own burglary experience, we always encourage that. We learn a lot from talking to other retailers and sharing what we've learned with what they've learned, and we always walk away learning a few things from those conversations, so I'd encourage you to reach out to me.
Do I have any individual who have additional questions? Because you kind of speak at the time that Marie was speaking, so if you have any final questions for Marie, please feel free to speak up.
I was just going to ask real quick. Hi, this is David from 7-Eleven. Do you who do you use for your video, your DVR services in the store, like the video monitoring? And do you have any type of like customer count analysis that you use or that you could use to identify if there's spikes during certain day parts or day times that may be happening before the burglary, you know, later that evening or the next morning?
Okay, that's a good question. For alarms, we use Vector for most of our stores for monitoring, and then we use Endime for our video recorders and for remote video. And we do have good traffic counters by hours. That's something that we haven't looked at. We have occasionally, and in terms of trying to correlate it to burglary losses, we have occasionally, in terms of being able to research burglaries, we will sometimes go back and review the video for the couple of days before. For example, when you're showing the store teams photos of the thieves, we've had incidents where employees have said, hey, I think I've seen that person in the store before. Yeah, so that's been most helpful to us. And then we go back and we find sometimes that, and this is more the amateur burglar who is coming in and shopping the store beforehand. Sure. So there was one funny example where the thief was in with his girlfriend and she was pointing out what she wanted. And so that was a fairly easy apprehension and arrest, but that's the occasional get lucky type of thing.
Got it. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, any final questions for Marie?
Hey, it's Gabe again. I am kind of curious if you had the opportunity or experience to use RFID at all And if so, what was your experience? Because I saw that you guys have used GPS units and things like that, but I didn't know if maybe you've piloted RFID before and you decided to kind of walk away from it, or whatever the case may be.
That's a good question. We are not using RFID, and we haven't done anything with it yet. We do have it on our roadmap for a couple years down the road, but in terms of our organizational maturity, there's a lot of things that are ahead of RFID in terms of our priority. So we haven't, we will get there eventually, but probably not as quickly as we would like to get there. But you're absolutely right, that would help a lot with some of this apprehension.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So thank you, Marie, for all the efforts that you have put into this presentation. We have piqued a lot of interest in quite a few participants here today, as the burglary issue is certainly a concern for many people out there. And Marie, if you may, please send me a copy of your presentation after the call today so I can post it on the Knowledge Center. So one last thing before we part ways here is I'll do a slight adjustment to our call cadence for 2017. Some of you may know that the call of this working group occurs every 4 weeks, which is slightly different than all of our other working group calls, which usually occur every month. So I will probably have the call occur every fourth week of every month, so that it's consistent throughout the months in 2017. So with that said, thank you very much, Marie, for your presentation today, and thank you everyone for listening and hopping on today's webinar. I wish everybody have a happy and safe holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.